is up? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Tuesday night. Welcome to another edition of the After Hours podcast. We are live. Very explosive tonight. A lot to get into over this next hour. So, hope everyone is doing good. Welcome in Dan, aka Kid Insanity now, Lore Master. He is back with us.
Even as Kid Insanity, I'm still the lore master, and that just
Right.
feels good.
Yeah, I know you're gonna have a lot to say on what we just watched tonight, and Evan will too. I know Evan's gonna be super excited.
Actually, I'm hoping you guys can fill me in because unlike you two, my dear chaps, who were probably traumatized and scarred by a very horrible experience, I just finished watching Christ on Infinite Earths Part 2 and 3 from the animated DC stuff, and I gotta say,
Yeah,
lots of stuff I loved, lots of stuff I didn't like, but overall, I had a good time. I honestly don't think you guys would say the same about the Acolyte finale, would you?
I think there's gonna be a bit of a surprise tonight. I think it's gonna be a surprise for
Oh,
sure.
really?
That's all. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I can't speak for Evan, but again, I will reiterate the fact that I think that a lot of Star Wars fans have grown up on the canon that they love, and that when George sold the IP in 2011, 2012,
Everything changed.
everything changes. And Kathleen, and moving forward, as we saw effectively with TFA, the imminent release of that, and then afterwards coming into the whole press release with all the books, the High Republic was being announced, uh, and so we automatically knew from there that Disney's canon is not the canon that we would always know. So it's no shock. And if people paid attention to this, I think they would be less outraged, because it's one thing to have opinions that, oh, this new canon I don't like, or this new canon sucks. That's one thing. It's an entirely different thing to not comprehend or understand that Disney is doing their own canon. This is Disney's Star Wars canon. So whatever we grew up on, the EU or the Legends, that's not what they're going by. That's not what they use. So with that being said, I feel like a lot of people just don't understand that. But I feel like I had to lay that groundwork for what me and Evan are about to speak on tonight as I wait on him. But I will say one thing I'll give the Acolyte is those lightsaber duels. Oh, that's just creepy. Light shuddering on and off.
Yeah, looks like you're being cursed for saying something positive. I'm just joking with you, man.
Oh yeah, it is the jinx, isn't it? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Well,
I'm kidding. No, don't
I
do me
know
like that.
this is a bit unrelated, Jay, but there's a scene in Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3
Yeah,
where the memory serves me right, I think it's the Spectre is basically telling the remaining DC heroes that, after destroying the multiverse, there's one final Earth they can go to. All the remaining doppelgangers will be fused into new prime versions of themselves in this one reality.
yeah,
And he gives them the option of all going in. Some of them do, some of them don't. The question, for example, was basically he told them, and the question was like, "But this is a false reality with false history. I won't accept it." And
yeah,
the reason why I mentioned that to you is because when you mentioned to me, when you mentioned to all of us just now that the moment George sold Star Wars to Disney and Kathleen Kennedy in 2012, and
right.
like I said, everything changed, new history, new canon, just new reality. There are many fans that are like the question. It's like, okay, yeah, this is the new reality, but we don't accept it because what we lost, our old
Yeah,
reality. That like we're not just gonna accept this new one over the old one. We'd rather die. You know.
right.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, people are not. And apologies to the audience for my light. My light's going crazy, so I'm using a different setting for it. But I mean, that's exactly it. People just they're not going to accept that. They're not going to accept that this is something totally new. This is something that hasn't been done before. This is something else differently and entirely. And it's always going to be compared to what wasn't. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean,
Hmm.
what was. So, whether you think that's fair or not, that's up to you.
I don't know. It's getting to. I feel like it's getting to a point where fan hatred has blinded them to obvious observations. And
Yeah.
when I say that, I'm not just talking about like fans that don't like what's out. I'm talking about fans that do like what's out. I saw a tweet from Retney. I don't know if you follow that account, where he basically said Star Wars is a lot more enjoyable if you don't look at the Chosen One prophecy as objective facts or the laws of Star Wars, and look at it as the biased perspective of the Jedi.
Really?
Yeah, he said that. I know. I was shocked too. Another example is Script Trooper. That's another account I'm aware of, who points out that in the Kenobi show, Vader's helmet is cracked. And he's pointing out that in Return of the Jedi, Luke said that if he takes his helmet off, he'll die.
Yeah.
And Vader's helmet is cracked in the Kenobi show. And he blames like Filoni for it in the
Yeah.
tweet. Now, I'm a super geek, super nerd when it comes to Star Wars. So I know everyone that's credited for the Kenobi show. Filoni is nowhere to be found because Filoni hasn't even worked on it.
Yeah.
He's not been a part of it in any way, shape, or form. And basically, while he has said nice things about it, he's had nothing to do with it. On top of that,
Yeah.
Vader's helmet being cracked has been a thing since The Force Unleashed, and many previous lore storylines where Vader's been badly damaged and he still survived despite his armor being damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the idea of Vader's helmet getting cracked and him still being alive.
Yeah.
It's not new. It's not because of Disney. It's not because of Filoni. It's not because of anyone currently working on Star Wars. Literally in Empire Strikes Back, when Vader's meditating in his chambers, he doesn't have his helmet on. So it's
Yeah.
like the reason why Luke is pointing out that Vader will die in Return of the Jedi isn't because Vader's helmet is being removed. It's because Palpatine badly damaged Vader's respirator, his breathing system, with his
Yeah.
Force lightning. So it's like, does Vader need that to live? Yeah, and taking his helmet off for a long time could probably kill him. But it's like he can always turn back to his armor and his helmet to get oxygen. But in this case, due to Palpatine damaging his armor, he doesn't have that option. So he's just left with, a damaged respirator and, a badly injured body.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring up these examples is because in the case of the Chosen One prophecy, this isn't a biased Jedi perspective. This is the prophecy of the Force. This is what the Force had in mind. The Force created Anakin, the Chosen One, to defeat the Sith so that they don't destroy nature itself.
Yeah.
And it's like the more people try to tie in Anakin's destiny to what they consider to be the flawed Jedi, because I don't even see them as flawed personally, but that's how some fans see them. They're missing the point. And I just brought up Retney's tweet and Script's tweet to say that Retney is someone who loves what's out. He loves Disney Star Wars. Script is someone who obviously does not like Disney Star Wars. But these two are so blinded in rage over their opinions that they don't see how easily both their arguments can be dismantled. I feel like hate in this fandom overall, no matter who you point to or what side you're looking at, has grown to a very chaotic degree that can't be rationalized anymore.
Definitely. One can say that. And with that, we have Evan, OG co-host. What's up, bro?
What up?
Evan is in the building.
Yes, sir. What's up?
Doing good, man. Doing good. When you texted me, I already knew. I'm like, hold on, let me see what's going on. Let me see
Eric sensed a
what happened.
disturbance in the force.
I sensed the disturbance in the force as soon as Evan texted me. I said, "Oh, here we go." In the words of No Life Shack, shout out No Life Shack. Well. So here we go. All right, Dan, because Dan didn't watch it, so we're gonna have to let him know what went down.
Yeah,
Well, I'll just tell Dan what happened by asking him a question.
please, my good man.
Did I ever tell you the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Oh no, this isn't good. I can already tell this is bad.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Eric, I was now this just kind of worked out perfectly for me because I just finished the Darth Plagueis audiobook like 3 days ago. So
Yeah,
this just worked out perfectly. But yeah, he's not in it very long, but Darth Plagueis makes an appearance for a few seconds. He's there. So
he's there.
Does he have anything to do with these witches? Just sorry for interrupting. Just need to know.
we're not sure.
No.
He just shows up. Nothing's really confirmed or denied about what he does or does not. I mean, he literally doesn't say anything. He's just there. Like he's on that planet that Sith dude is on, and they show him like from the shadows watching. I always forget his name, the Sith on the show. They just kind of show him watching him, implying like, "Oh snap, Plagueis is there. Plagueis has a hand."
Are you serious? Like literally, what they could have done? They could have had him being in charge of the witches, or they could have had the witches teaching him this.
Well, we don't know. That wasn't the case.
No. I'm just pointing out, Evan, that they could have done so much more with him just being an important, integral part of the show, but he's just a cameo. Of course he is.
Well, I mean, this is season 1. We're going to get a season 2.
Christ.
And so in a season, I mean, I'm excited. I think in a season 2 focused on Plagueis, I think the sky's the limit. I think even bringing him into the show, that tells me that Leslie Headland, she listens. She knows what some people want to see. Because, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy actually had the audacity to say that there wasn't much source material for her to work on. And now you've got Leslie Headland, who's out here playing with concepts like the Force creates life. She's got Darth Plagueis in the show for a minute, referencing him. So, I mean, at the very least, I think we can agree that, or I believe this, and I'll see what y'all think.
Hey, Evan, man, I want to be intrigued, and I like what you're saying, but Disney, for me, has had a past track record of leading me on and then letting me down. But you know what? I'm going to be optimistic on the grounds that, unlike both of you, I haven't seen this, so I don't have a right to be biased.
Well, I mean, let me say this to you, Dan. As somebody that has watched the Disney sequels, I get it. Like, trust me, I freaking get it, bro. I totally understand the pessimism. I mean, I remember being utterly disgusted when I watched how Luke was portrayed in Episode 3, and I remain disgusted to this day. As Deontay Wilder, I was about to say, as Deontay Wilder would say, to this day.
To this day.
Nice.
Oh yeah. It cut deep, but I will say I think Disney is somewhat learning from their mistakes. But I'm going to throw this at Eric. Eric, I think based off of the choreography of these fight scenes, the powers of the Force that we've seen in this show, I think Leslie Headland takes Star Wars seriously. Whether you agree with her or not, whether you like the show or not, I think it's a fair assessment that this show is not the LGBT woke propaganda that so many people said that it would be, solely because Leslie Headland is a lesbian who made jokes in the past about R2-D2 being gay. Which, I mean, like, if you didn't know that was a joke, like, come on. R2D2 is a freaking droid who doesn't even, like, he just beeps and boops, you know? Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Really? Like, you didn't know that was a joke? But that notwithstanding, I'm of the opinion Leslie Headland takes Star Wars seriously, and I think The Acolyte is the single most overhated show for no good reason.
Hey, Evan, there could be a possibility that due to many fans, I guess, being let down by Disney Star Wars over the years, that maybe they're going to look for any flaws they can because they don't have any hope anymore. There's just pure bias now.
On
That's
the one hand, I understand that, but on the other hand, that's totally unfair to Leslie. It's totally unfair to Leslie for people to judge her for what Kathleen Kennedy and that goofball Ryan Johnson decided to do with Star Wars. That's totally unfair. Now,
yeah.
like I said earlier, I understand the disappointment. I was there for Last Jedi. I was in the theater, but I would say the overall hatred of Disney Star Wars, just as a whole, is not 100% verified or valid in my opinion, because you've got shows like The Mandalorian, you've got Ahsoka, you've got shows that are good, you've got shows that are interesting. Is it all good? No,
Yeah.
but I mean that's just the nature of it. But with The Acolyte, and I told Eric this: if you don't like The Acolyte, and you can say, "Well, I don't like The Acolyte because I find May and Osha to be, rather bland characters. I'm just not interested in them." I would say, okay, that's a fair assessment. That's personal preference, whatever. But I mean, I told Eric, to just be review bombing crap and saying, "Oh, this is some, liberal woke propaganda. This is, the latest attempt at the liberals to take over the media and this, that, and the other." I'm like, okay, go suck on a pacifier if you're gonna cry that much. Go get your mom to, give you a bottle, read you a bedtime story, and go have a nap. I mean, that's where I'm at. Like, you're allowed to have whatever opinion you want, but I just have zero respect for people who will just. I mean, if you're hesitant about something, fine. But if you're actually going to take time out of your day to review bomb something and just bash it that you haven't even seen, that's just pathetic.
Well, here's what I think. After you texted me, I went back to everything that I've ever said concerning Disney Star Wars. And I always say that you have to give credit where credit is due, and you have to give criticism where criticism is due. And with The Acolyte, we've spent a good amount of time talking about how the fandom is reacting to it, as well as our own personal thoughts, but mainly for me, talking about why the reaction is the way it is. I pointed out the press conferences and all that we've been over a trillion times. And to me, like I said yesterday coming into the show, we leave all the BS at the door. We leave the politics at the door. We just want to see, do you have good product? And I tweeted this today that fans don't want to be preached at. Fans just want a good story. So I presented that same standard to Leslie Headland. And I'm like, okay, whatever your personal life is, that's on you. Don't care. What are you gonna do for Star Wars? What is the product? And my honest thoughts on the show as a whole are I think the show is oddly paced. I think the pacing is sort of Um, do I care for now this is where I sort of just back myself up because I'm indifferent to it because I understand the difference between Disney's canon and everyone else's canon. We all know why people were upset with episode 3 of The Acolyte. I ain't gonna get into that because that goes into a whole nother political realm of is also as well about what you believe and how you live. I'm not going to get into that. I ain't going to touch that. I'm just talking about the canon. And so,
Yeah.
as far as that, I mean, this is Disney's canon. So, what happened with the witches and with the thread and all of that mess and that, that's what Disney chooses to do with their canon. So, if you say that they're breaking lore, I mean, maybe, maybe not. But then again, this is Disney's canon. This is not our EU. This is not our whatever we grew up on. This is Disney doing something.
Well, let me cut you off, Eric, real quick. I'm sorry, but let me cut you off. If you're gonna whine and moan, not saying you, but other people, if you're gonna say I don't like this because it's breaking lore, then I want people to keep that same energy when Joker Folie à Deux comes out. Just keep that same energy. Keep that same energy about how, oh, this is overly political. This is totally different than anything we've read in the comics. Because it's the same thing. It's the same. The only difference is the Acolyte promoted the LGBT community, whereas Joker's promoting mental health. It's the same thing. You're taking political stances on something to long adapted characters. You're totally breaking lore. You're totally doing your own new thing.
Well, that's definitely not
There's
the same thing because
I'll let you go first, Eric.
that's definitely I disagree because that's not the same thing because Joker, again, is under a Elseworlds label. It is a
Yep.
Elseworlds version of a story. It is not the main canon DCU or even the old DCEU Joker. So Todd Phillips understood that under that Elseworlds banner, you can experiment and you can do other things. Whether
So
it's
if the Acolyte was Elseworlds, you'd be okay with episode 3.
I'm okay with it now that it's Disney's canon. I'm okay with it now.
Evan,
Because
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'd be more okay with the Acolyte episode 3 if it was an Elseworld story than I would with Disney still trying to convince me that this fits in with everything else on their timeline.
Well, that's what I was saying. I can go back to my comments on it initially. That when they did the thread and they did all of that stuff, I said to some people this may break canon. To some people, this may not be always. This is not their definition of how the Force works. Yeah, I didn't personally agree with it, really. But at the end of the day, like I said, it doesn't matter because it's Disney. It's the Disney canon. It's their version of Star Wars. They're gonna do what they want to do with it, regardless of what we think or not. So I was indifferent to it when they did it. And on top of that, again, Joker is Elseworlds. And if you say if Acolyte was Elseworlds, to answer that question, if it was, again, I'd be like, okay, you're free to experiment with that. You're free to experiment with that. Whether that doesn't speak for whether it's going to be well received or not, because as we know, obviously the concept of the thread was not well received by a lot of people. So, but that's a different tale. And going into the rest of the Acolyte, my criticism, my personal thought, I didn't really care for, that aspect of it. But then again, it's Disney's canon. It doesn't change what I think the definition of the Force is based on the movies or based on what the EU has even said. And moving forward with the Acolyte, I just was like, okay, let's see what they do, which led me to the first time you texted me outside of tonight about this, which was the lightsaber duels. Giving criticism where criticism is due and giving credit where credit is due. The lightsaber duels in the Acolyte are the best. The choreography and the fights have been the best put forth by Disney Star Wars yet.
I'll agree with you on that. 100. Like from what I've seen, Disney's fight choreography has been vastly impressive in this show.
And tonight, it really showed. So shout out to the choreographer of the Acolyte. Credit to Leslie Headland for that. She said she was inspired by the prequels and a lot of the Old Republic, and it shows. It shows. in the choreography. So credit to where credit is due. The choreography of the Acolyte is better than Kenobi. The choreography is, will I say it's better than Ahsoka? I'm gonna say it's better than Ahsoka, but by a tad bit, because I like Ahsoka's choreography. But definitely the Acolyte takes the cake on that. So credit where credit is due on that. The show is
The witches in Ahsoka are way better than the witches in this show. I'll give you that. Well, that's how I feel anyway.
I can give you that.
The Night Sisters.
But again, most of the hatred and the review bombing of this show, or the criticism, comes from people's growth, comes from what people have grown up with, which is mainly the expanded universe. Disney's not following the expanded universe. I don't know how many times,
or just Lucas canon in general.
or just Lucas's canon in general, exactly. So I don't know how many times we have to repeat that to people, but this is what it is. And if you don't like it, cool. If you don't. If you do, then that's fine too. But they're to expect, after Kathleen lied about not having source material given to her by George to go off of for the sequels, I think fans should know better by now than to trust, anything that comes out of, her mouth, especially concerning canon, or to trust Disney to abide by anything. Now, my final point to answer your question. What did I think about Plagueis being there? I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool to see Plagueis mentioned. We already knew. I said this last year. Disney did D23, and they confirmed in their new updated timeline that they would be incorporating the Old Republic into Star Wars after the High Republic. So this could be the first of many introductions that we may get of our expanded universe heroes and villains into Disney's canon of the Old Republic. So we always knew that this was a possibility, that this could happen. We talked about it last week. It's clipped on Instagram. We talked about it last week about if we would be okay with Plagueis showing up. And I said, okay, I'd be cool with it if they show up. What does it mean? It means that what you just read or listened to with the audiobook of Plagueis, it means that is the expanded universe's book. How they may bring Plagueis through into Disney's canon might be totally different. The timeline might be totally different. Hundreds of years, his placement, all that. All these people are paying attention to birth dates and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that's going to be different in Disney's canon. The expanded universe timeline is different from Disney's timeline. So it's all they may place Plagueis 100 years before Phantom Menace. They may put him 50 years before. They may do all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? It just depends on how they want to present it and how they want to do it. So
here's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not getting it. On the one hand, you're saying, okay, what happened with Joker is totally fine because it's Elseworlds. Okay, fine. But then you're going to hop up on here and talk about, okay, but Disney has to abide by the Lucas canon, even though now Lucas sold his canon. So really there is no Lucas canon. It's Disney's canon now. You've got the story that Lucas wrote, sure. But now he sold it. It'd be like if J.K. Rowling sold Harry Potter and they wanted to write new books and they wanted to change things up here and there.
Well, the issue, Evan, with that, I'd agree with you. The problem with that is Disney's word. And what I mean by Disney's word is that they preached up and down when they got Star Wars. They would stay true to lore. They weren't honest with audiences. They didn't tell them we're going in a brand new direction. They didn't say that initially. They said we're going to listen to George Lucas. We're going to follow everything that came before. And they lied to fans for years. So the problem initially is that if they were honest that they were going in a new direction, I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure there would still be a lot of pissed off fans. But we'd at least we at least would have accepted it years ago. But because they chose to lie to the fandom for a long time and said that they were going to follow this and follow that and then did, barely any of it. They burn bridges with this fan base.
Exactly. And that's the key thing here too. DC has an Elseworlds because there's that main universe where you have all these iconic heroes that have all these different variants that go through all these different situations. They're characters that have been done time and time again in different continuities. You know, Dan just mentioned he watched Crisis on Infinite Earths, where there's all these different situations and things like that. So that sort of thing, that sort of brand of storytelling allows for an Elseworlds. It allows for
Jay,
go outside the box. One second. It allows for you to go outside the box and to experiment with other stories or do a different version of such and such character. With Star Wars is a legend. Star Wars is a set saga. What was set in stone should be set in stone. And so
Says who?
says the fans. That doesn't not but like I said, that doesn't mean that, like you said, they bought the house. Disney bought the house. So there was no guarantee
Well,
that
I
they
mean, but
would.
even still, I mean, there was a Star Wars Force Unleashed video game that came out some odd years ago that totally violated the Lucas canon, and there wasn't.
but
This
that's the thing I was gonna tell Jay is that what makes it sting even more is, and I've told you this guys already, Lucas had an Elseworld system. The EU was a parallel universe. His canon was the main one, and then there were these other continuities for fans. Lucas had a multiverse system for Star Wars when he was running Lucasfilm. That meant that there were branches of continuities where you could do stuff like The Force Unleashed and still have a grounded set of rules for his films. But Disney decided to go with one single continuity and lied to fans, telling them that they'd stay true to old lore while using that single continuity. If they just stuck with Lucas's multiverse system, and I say multiverse system because George referred to the canons as worlds and parallel universes. If they stuck to that system, gave Eric his EU, Evan gave us, we love Lucas canon, we love what Lucas did, gave us Lucas's canon, and did their Disney canon and other things too. If they used that multiverse system Lucas had already with multiple continuities, I don't think things would be great, but the fandom would be in a better spot than it is now. And you could have a scenario where a show like The Acolyte, as divisive as it is, could have its own fan base, just like Joker. Because I'll tell you something, there are some hardcore DC fans that don't like the Joaquin approach to Joker. They think it's horrible. They think it's bad to lore. But you know what? It has its own fan base because DC has multiple continuities. Marvel has multiple continuities. Under George, Star Wars had multiple continuities. It would have worked better that way.
It's for partially part of that reason why DC and Marvel continue to do what they do. Marvel still has their What If series, and DC is probably the best in the game when it comes to doing those sort of Elseworld type deals. We've got more iterations of Superman, Batman, and all these other characters more than ever in the past 10, 15 years than any other time in comic book cinema history or comic book history. So, I mean, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But for Star Wars, you know, like Dan said, George said that the EU was a parallel universe where he allowed people to play in that sandbox with Star Wars and allowed people to add to the, you know, to add stories to the lore of the EU, while all still abiding by and doing things that were cool for Star Wars as a story, you know? And so even with The Force Unleashed, you mentioned The Force Unleashed. Yeah, great video game. I played both of them. I love them. They're part of my childhood. Did they do all kinds of wild and crazy things that violated canon? Those were just offshoot stories. They don't change 1 through 6. They don't change anything that goes down with 1 through 6, period. They're just video game options that help you play out different angles of a story. And that was pretty cool. Starkiller is still awesome, and I still love him as a character in Star Wars from back then. But again, none of what Starkiller did violated or changed anything that happened with 1 through 6 because
he only broke the rule of 2.
How so?
and he's a Sith.
Well, that's because Vader was.
Those three Sith.
Well, hold on. That's because Vader was planning his own. When you operate in the rule of two, the apprentice is always seeking out to replace his master. With that, and that's one of the defenses I give the Acolyte, because somebody did say that tonight. They said the Acolyte breaks lore because there's like 2 or 3 of them committing to be a Sith. Plagueis, we don't know what Plagueis' position is yet in the Acolyte. We don't know if he's trained Quimir. He could just be spying around and watching, and they don't know nothing. We don't know yet. But
I could also add that in this one, Starkiller is the one who is that starts the rebellion. I mean, that changes everything. He's the force behind the rebellion.
Only in one version of the of the EU continuities. If we're talking Lucas canon, Starkiller doesn't really exist in it. But
I mean, because in that game, there's bonus levels that you get to play where he kills Luke Skywalker, kills Obi-Wan. Where he fights all these different things that are just offshoot stories, but have no impact on the story and the movies at all. Where we get to with Disney is that Disney did not handle the choices that they would make, because up until that point, George had not made an episode 6, 7, 8, or 9. There was no sequel, so the story of 1 through 6 hadn't changed up until that time. Nothing is impacted, but once we get to the sequels, okay, now you're talking about continuing off from 7, 8, and 9. You're talking about continuing the story that we began so long ago, continuing from Return of the Jedi. Every choice that you make in movies will affect the past 6 movies, because now you're talking about legacy characters. You're talking about Han. You're talking about Leia. You're talking about Luke, of which we've heavily experienced. So when it comes to that, Disney did what they wanted. They did. They said, this is our continuity. We're not following the EU. There is no Thrawn trilogy. There is no
Lucas canon.
There is no Luke. Yeah, there is no Luke.
That's the problem. This isn't what if Luke killed his nephew. This is Luke killed his nephew.
Luke killed his nephew. That's exactly the point. And fans are not, and a lot of them never will. They never will accept this Disney canon. They never will, and that's fine. My problem is people not being able to give credit where credit is due, and giving due criticism where criticism is due. I'm not going to act like Rogue One doesn't exist. Rogue One is freaking awesome. I'm not going to act like the Clone Wars Season 7 wasn't awesome. You know what I'm saying? Disney has done some good things. The Acolyte, will I say Leslie belongs at the table with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say that just yet, because we only got a glimpse of Plagueis, and we don't know which is hyping. I'm not saying that that's not hype. That's hype. Don't get me wrong. That's hype. But we don't know what's yet to come with that story. We don't know what is yet to come. The main
better lightsaber duels than either Favreau or Filoni.
Great lightsaber duels.
Better than Favreau and Filoni. Brother, you were just on here saying it was better than Kenobi, but now you're going to backtrack.
I said by an inch. They are great.
You said that about Ahsoka. You didn't say that about Kenobi.
I said Ahsoka was an inch better than Kenobi. Was way better than Kenobi. I'm sorry, but I have to give credit where credit is due. But that's because Favreau and Filoni have really been carrying this thing for so long. Am I willing to give Leslie that? That depends on my overall rating of the show. Before tonight, I had it at a 5 or 6 out of 10. After seeing this last episode, which is probably the best written episode, the best action-packed episode of it, I would give The Acolyte probably a 7. I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
Dang, being generous, huh?
I mean, it's hard to deny that that the writing for the last episode was great. And it's hard to not, how you going to sit like anybody, because there are going to be a lot of people, y'all are going to see all across the Star Wars community. They're going to sit there and be like, man, the Acolytes choreography is absolute dog shit. And you're just going to be like, come on, man, really? Like, Cap, like, stop lying. Like, just come on, man. You can't sit there and lie about that. That was some darn good choreography, darn good fighting done in the Acolyte. So I'm not even going to front on that. But as for Leslie Headland, look, how you present, and this is just how it is, how you present yourself as a fan and as a creator to the people matters. Whether it be press, and on top of that, the product matters too. I think she put out a good product. Did I agree with everything she did? No, not really. But there's some highlights there. There's some great stuff there that is probably going to get it to a second season. So I'm not even going to deny that. But
everything has nuance.
Everything has nuance. But for the next season, if they green like this, I would caution Leslie to be careful. That them press conferences, all of that, keep it a buck about Star Wars, because fans are very serious about Star Wars. Keep it a buck about it, and that's really all there is, man. That Plagueis is here. How Disney is going to handle that, it's a totally different story. We don't know what Plagueis is going to do for 100 years leading up until the Phantom Menace. We don't know. We don't know what's going to go down in those 100 years. There's a lot of story there that you could tell. We're just going to have to wait and find out.
Oh, Evan, word of advice: never listen to Darth Plagueis the Wise audiobook while sleeping. It's not a wise decision. I made that mistake and I got traumatized with nightmares.
Man, that book about putting me to sleep. That'd have been a perfect book for me to listen to while falling asleep.
I can tell you this much: Disney, I don't know if they're gonna. They could, but I don't know if they're gonna write a better book. Because now that you put Plagueis in the Disney canon, now you got to write your own story. Now Disney has to write their own book if they choose to about Darth Plagueis. Because now you done put him in here. Now he's one of the most prominent figures in Legends history. One of the most beloved Star Wars characters to fans. You're gonna have to now.
Eric, I got a question for you.
Yes.
If you were to get George Lucas's sequel trilogy, which is Lucas canon, and if you were also to get a Darth Plagueis the Wise novelization adapted 100% EU canon, if you were to get those released by Disney, say, around this time period, how much would a Darth Plagueis appearance in the Acolyte worry you?
So you're saying, granted that we were getting a live action adaptation of Darth Plagueis and a
George Lucas's sequel trilogy.
George Lucas's sequel trilogy, how much would Plagueis' appearance worry me in the Acolyte?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Disney can't. Yeah.
It wouldn't worry me at all because we're getting episode 7, 8, and 9 done by George. In that case.
Yeah, but think about it. Like, you like Thrawn, right? You like Heir to the Empire, correct?
I do.
If you got Heir to the Empire adapted 100% in live action on screen EU canon, then any issues you've had with Disney canon Thrawn and Rebels, Ahsoka, or anything Disney canon, if you had those issues, would you see yourself still having those issues?
I wouldn't, because Disney would be supplying me with what I grew up on. They wouldn't be cutting me out of the deal, which I think that was your earlier point, which Evan knows this too, that there's that a lot of fans feel like they're cut out from Star Wars because of this new canon, because it's not what they recognize anymore. Something else totally different from what they grew up on. If Disney decided that, hey, we were going to adapt EU stories and start and give them their own timeline to be adapted and keep those stories alive, yeah, I don't think anybody would be complaining about the Acolyte right now. But that's not the case because, like I said last pod, Disney does not like competition. They only want what they're putting out there to be out there by itself.
It wouldn't be competition, Jay. They get money from the stuff old fans want and the stuff new fans want. They get to double or yet triple their money.
Well, Disney don't like money then.
I know.
If that was the case, Favreau and Filoni wouldn't have had to work so hard on that Mandalorian episode with that Luke appearance to soothe over what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi. So clearly they don't have money. Clearly they don't.
No, like think about it, Evan. You and I, we prefer George Lucas's portrayal. Well, Eric too. We all prefer George.
Of course. What other version would I prefer?
I know what's wrong. I know what's wrong with me. But the point is, we prefer George Lucas's portrayal of Luke Skywalker. Heck, we even prefer the EU's portrayal of Luke Skywalker. So, if we got George Lucas's sequel trilogy, which is Lucas's Luke, he's not contradicted in that. I've seen Lucas's plans; they're consistent. And if we got EU stories of Luke adapted as well, then do you really think The Last Jedi would matter all that much to us? I wouldn't. It wouldn't to me. I mean, I wouldn't like it, but I could accept it as some other version of Star Wars that exists for other fans.
No, I can never accept The Last Jedi as an else world, in this world, that world, your mama's world. I don't care what the world is.
You say you don't like any world.
No, there is no Thanos alternate reality universe where I'm ever going to accept The Last Jedi as anything other than total disrespect of a beloved character.
Well, that's the best part about it, Evan. I'll give you a good example. Ghostbusters 2016. I hate Ghostbusters 20. I hate that movie. But you know what? Ghostbusters, the franchise, is a multiverse. And because it has a multiverse, it has the Ghostbusters I like. It has the Ghostbusters I don't like. And due to that being the case, I can ignore the Ghostbusters I don't like. You don't have to accept The Last Jedi because it's not important to your Star Wars. It's just another one. You don't even have to acknowledge it. You could say it doesn't exist. It literally doesn't because you don't have to look at it. You have content that you prefer.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing to that. Star Wars, if the Acolyte gets greenlit, which there's more than a good chance it might be, just because of what we saw tonight. Plagueis just peeking his head off from around that corner. Instantly, people are going to want to see what happens because it's Darth freaking Plagueis. So it more than likely already guarantees a second season. That and the choreography from the Acolyte is undeniable. Again, you can't deny what you just saw. That looks freaking cool. So off that alone, this show is probably going to get another season. I'd be surprised if it didn't because, that's just what it is. But I feel like Star Wars fans are never going to walk away. And to me personally, I feel like Al Pacino. I feel like Don Corleone in Godfather Part 3. Right when I think I'm out, somehow they pull me back in.
Damn it. You had to say it.
They do something that just makes you like, God, see, now I gotta see what they're gonna do. Once you say Darth Plagueis, you can't take that name back. You can't do that. Once you say a name like Plagueis, you can't say that. That's one of the most, even before he even had the book and all that other stuff, that was one of the most iconic and well-known moments of the prequels. Did you ever hear about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? So off the rip, that was already, man, once you say that, you best believe people are going to be, tuning in. So, I mean, but there's a laundry list of things that I can't. There's really only one reason why a lot of people are really mad at, but I can't say it. I'm not going to say it because it's not my place to say it, I don't think. But, Star Wars fans are going to be mad regardless. They're going to say what they're going to say. So, I mean, the Acolyte on its own merit, dude, it's what it is. I'm not going to say that it breaks lore per se. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Either way, even if I agreed or disagreed, Disney has already done what they're going to do with their canon. They've done it. There's no taking it back. You can't take back The Last Jedi. You can't take back Rise of Skywalker. You can't take back The Force Awakens. There's no erasing what they did. Whatever changes they've made in retrospect to the legacy characters. It's done. It's done. So I don't know why people are still upset now. It's only going to continue to change, and they're going to continue to do things. If we get season 2 of The Acolyte, you best believe they're going to do some different things with Darth Plagueis that I'm sure fans are probably going to complain about and get mad at too. It's already done. It's just a matter of whether you, as individually, whoever that may be me, it may be Evan, it may be whoever. It just depends on us individually as fans on if we're going to continue to tune in and continue to give Star Wars that attention, of which I think people will, because if people really didn't care about Star Wars anymore, all these people, the entire fandom, love or hate it, wouldn't spend all their time talking about how much they hate Star Wars, about how much they hate Disney Star Wars or the choices that Disney Star Wars has made. They wouldn't spend that much time doing it, but they are. So that's just what it is.
Well, there's a difference between hate and indifference, Jay. Indifference is when you just don't care anymore, and that's when you just like drop it. But hate, there's still love there.
Yeah, in that hate, there's so much love there. Folks will always love Star Wars, and they're not walking away from it. Yup, I call cap on everybody who said, man, I'm so done with Star Wars. No, you're not. Stop. After you saw Plagueis tonight, you probably creamed your pants and said, I'm ready. Like, stop.
Lord knows I did.
Hey, man. I knew it was over with. I'm like, man, once they did that, once they did that, that was it. I didn't care about anything else the entire episode. The lightsaber duel between Soul and Quimir again was the icing on the cake. I didn't care about anything else after seeing Plagueis. I immediately went to the internet. I'm like, let me see what everybody else is saying. I know. Like, bro, that's Plagueis, bro. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Once you put him in there, you can't take it back.
No. Well, I'm about to hop up, boys. Y'all have a good rest of the pod.
All right, man.
All right. Night, Evan.
Night, broski. Thanks for joining. Let's shout out to some of the peeps who are tuning in. Shout out to you guys.
Hey, Lord Bloodsith. How you doing, man?
What's up, bro? What is up? What is up? But yeah, man, I mean, as far as that, look, like I said, bro, and me and Evan will always disagree on this because
I like Evan's takes. His takes are interesting, even if I don't agree.
They will always be some of the most.
I'll tell you this: I agree with all of his DC takes. Well, not all, but most of them. Most of the DC takes he gave yesterday, I'm like, yeah, these are literally my opinions, hands down.
Yeah, I just think that there's like with Lord of the Rings, bro. Like you see the backlash happening with Lord of the Rings right now, and that's because people are not having it. You're making a show that is set and doing different things outside of what the books do.
Well, look, the Peter Jackson movies, even the animated movies, they have some variations from the books. But the reason why they're preferred over Rings of Power is because despite the differences, those adaptations try to remain as close to the books as they could.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Don't disrespect anything. Not like, and we talked about the EU can't, like, dude, the Force Unleashed, everybody knows that what happened in that game and what happened on those levels, those do not impact anything with the movies. They don't.
Yeah, different universe. I mean, like similar but different.
Yeah, they don't impact the movies. They don't deal like Starkiller killing Luke Skywalker. Come on, man. That does not, as far as the movie continuity goes, we all know that that's not like that. That's just a game. That's exactly what it is. It's just a game. But when it comes to those sequel movies, that's when you take the risk. Joker's been done in so many different renditions over time because he's such a generational character. They can afford to take these risks. They can do that, and it's paid off with the Joaquin.
The thing is, Joker, I think they're closer to source material. Like they have differences, but they still try to pull from source material. It's not like they're just changing the character entirely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's my argument against.
But on top of that, they're not preaching to you. Like when the first Joker film came out and when this film came out, they're not basically preaching down to you about like how diverse the film is or how this is about the mentally ill and how the people that aren't mentally ill should be ashamed because the mentally ill are mistreated. Like, you're not being talked down to it with the marketing. You're just being given an interesting take on a character, and people are willing to see it.
That's it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Todd Phillips didn't go on camera, Jay, and say Joker isn't evil whatsoever. And if you feel that way, you're a racist. Like, he didn't do that.
He didn't do that. He just showed someone having a bad day and the consequences of someone having that bad day. But that's just one version of Joker when we have so many iterations of how his story plays out. With Luke, you don't get that. It's either you ascribe to the EU or you stick with his final grave, his final resting point, which was The Last Jedi, where they just totally assassinated his character. They totally just, you know what I'm saying? But that's neither here. Either way, back to the Acolyte. It's tough with Disney Star Wars, man, because they do so much that you hate, that you just don't approve of, but then they do so much that you like at the same time.
It wouldn't be tough if they did three things. One, they need to fix their story. They need to fix the quality of their storytelling by creating engaging characters. Two, this one continuity strategy they're going with. One, they're too lazy to be consistent with one continuity, and two, it's not working. There's so many plot holes. So they need to ditch that and go to the system Lucas had where there's multiple continuities. And three, the final thing they need to do is stop insulting fans for not liking what they make.
Please, because that's what got Leslie Headland in trouble. That's what's got the Acolyte ratings the way they are. I mean, we got to look at reality here about what the ratings are for the Acolyte and how the critics are eating it up, but the fans are definitely not having it. You know what I'm saying? And I can't speak for everyone else, but I mean, for me, it's just like I said, man, if I could say it, I would, but I can't because it's not my place to say what a lot of people are really like. So many of the core issues that people have with the Acolyte, you know what I'm saying? You know what? It just politics, man. Politics and beliefs. There's just certain things that people don't want to see in Star Wars that they don't want to see in their franchises. And once you put it in there, you spoil the whole thing, and they'll never see it. They'll never focus on anything else but that. Even if you come back with something on the tail end that makes it decent or makes it good, the fact that you put that one thing in there is gonna spoil it and ruin it for so many people. But
George Lucas was a 60s liberal, Eric, but he said it himself that the story comes first. The politics were an undertone. He said that in an interview, like, the Star Wars has politics, but they're an undertone. An undertone means that they're subtle, they're secondary. They're secondary to entertaining you.
We know Disney's not in the business of subtle. Disney's not in that business anymore.
Yeah.
Kavari says, just waiting for Andor season 2. Acolyte is worth me getting angry over.
Wow.
Man. I mean, hey, even with the Acolyte, man, I mean, even with Andor, of which the first season, I mean, brilliantly shot, beautiful visually wise, the most beautiful looking show in Disney Star Wars, no doubt, coming out of the vein of Rogue One. And for me, even with the Acolyte, the critics loved it a lot. So a lot of fans loved it, but a lot of fans also just didn't care for it because, again, there was that subtle sort of, political messaging throughout Andor that a lot of people just they don't agree with, and then there was it's hard
to take the subtle political messaging in Andor over the Acolyte.
Yeah, but even the Acolyte had 2 lesbian witches. Andor has 2 lesbian rebellion members. I mean,
yeah,
fans really didn't take too well to that, and that they don't want to see it. They don't want to see it. And
It wasn't acolyte level controversial. I'll tell you. Like, yeah, there was.
no, it wasn't, not at all. It was very much more on the DL.
Yeah. There's a reason for that. It's like having lesbians in Star Wars isn't inherently a problem for fans. It's when it's like that shouldn't be the focus of Star Wars. What should be the focus of Star Wars is telling a Star Wars story.
Yeah,
That should be the focus.
yeah, that is true. That is, but I don't think the Acolyte. They're not. Judging from that little sneak peek we got of Andor season 2, they're not going to pull any punches on that either. They're going to keep going with that direction.
Yeah, probably.
Most definitely, and it's gonna outrage the fans who love it are gonna love it, and it's gonna outrage the fans who hate it even more. It's just gonna, you know what I'm saying. I can't speak for anybody. I can only speak for myself.
You and me both, man. You and me both. I can observe, but yeah, I can only speak for myself too.
Yeah,
I just want quality at the end of the day.
That's all I can. Because look at House of Dragons, man. Dragons, like all the main, like Emma D'Arcy, and all them folk over there. You know, they all come from different backgrounds, black, white, whatever. You know, Emma D'Arcy says she has pronouns or whatever the case. That's how she chooses to live her life.
People still love it.
But exactly, she leaves that at the door. That is not an integral part of the story. It has nothing to do with the story. No one cares about her personal life or how she lives. That's her way. That's how she does it. When it comes to Game of Thrones, are you presenting a great character and a good story? And she is knocking it out of the park as far as playing Princess Rhaenyra. The story of House of Dragons is knocking it out of the park because they leave all that other BS out the door. At the door, they're not coming to preach to anybody. And that's why the show is so successful. But Hollywood, the rest of Hollywood is seeming to have a problem. The Boys, oh my gosh, The Boys fell off so hard this season. There was political satire, season 1 through 3. A lot of poking at both sides here and there, but mainly just focusing on, what was really going on. And they kept it low key. But I mean, season 4 is just out the gate. If you're right wing, if you're Republican, you're an idiot, you're a butthole, I don't like you. It just became so, and I'm like, dang, how you going to attack people for their political beliefs now? That's what we're doing. That's what
killed so many friends. No, it's like, look, the appeal of The Boys was one, satire and superheroes. 2, it made fun of like both sides on the political aisle. I do agree that it made fun of the right more than the left. That's clear, but it did make fun of both. But what declined in the show was that it started making fun of one side 100%, started portraying the other side as pure saints, and the satire of superheroes just got amped up to 100, which people are getting tired of now. People want to see traditional heroes again, so that approach is getting stale.
Because now it's just morbid. Like it was just morbid. Like this past episode, I just watched Homelander like rip a guy in half, and I felt so freaking depressed.
Yeah.
After watching that, like I had to go to sleep and pray and wake up in the morning and just like start fresh. My wife was like, "We still haven't finished The Boys, have we?" I'm like, "Babe, I'm not sure if I even want to continue because I don't know how much more I can take of it."
Jay, this only works if you have traditional stories with honorable heroes. If you have traditional stories of good heroes and good heroics, then you can have satires where heroes are like deconstructed. But if all entertainment and franchises is just deconstructing your heroes and there's nothing to balance that out, people are going to get tired of that.
Very much. Kavari says HBO should buy Star Wars. That would be wild if WB owned Star Wars.
That'd be crazy.
The Boys was always being political. Yeah, The Boys 100% has always been political, but fairly political.
No one negated The Boys being political. Did you negate that? I didn't.
No, they were always fair. They made fun of both sides. They never took I'm talking about the show. The comics, I never read the comic. I'm not going to read those comics.
The comics, there's politics in it, but it's not as political as the show.
I took one look at a comic book from The Boys, and I was like, no way, I'm not reading this. I'll just watch the show. No way, not doing it. It's written by one of my favorite
Garth Ennis.
Garth Ennis, who did Punisher Max, my favorite Punisher run and probably one of my favorite comic books runs of all time. But I just that wasn't my cup
Hey
of tea.
Eric, look, man. After seeing some of the Boys season 4, I'm gonna be honest. The comics quality is looking actually very, very good.
I bet when you're not bashing your audience over the head, and telling them that they're idiots. Because what if you have some Republicans who are watching that show? What if you have some people who are more conservative leaning? Are you going to bash them in? You know what I'm saying? Without being fair to the other side too, or are you just gonna?
You don't look. You don't have to be right wing. You don't have to be left wing. You could be apolitical like me. You could be centrist. You could be libertarian. People are just tired of it.
They're tired of it.
Yeah, they are across the board.
That was one of the main issues with The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi wanted to, have this anti-war message, or both sides are wrong, both sides are evil, because they sell, these people sell weapons to both sides, rich people bad, because they fund wars and blah. I'm like, bro, nope. That's why people
The stupidity of this is the Clone Wars did this, Iron Man 1 did this. Both did this. Both are better. The Last Jedi is shit. You notice, like, both have, like, the Clone Wars that's tied to the prequels, Eric, it has a profiters, rich people profit wars, and Iron Man is quite literally about Tony Stark, the rich guy, basically funding military weapons. But both still tell well-rounded stories, and yet The Last Jedi is still shit. You notice that?
Yeah, 100%. Because The Last Jedi chose either way, even with the Canto Bight scene, even if you have that and people just breeze over that and is like, oh, okay, it's okay, there is no justification, not one, not a single justification for why Luke Skywalker was the way he was, or was portrayed the way he was. There's no excuse for that. So I mean, maybe when I think if they portray Luke differently in The Last Jedi and he's not what we got, that's 100%. Everyone gives the Canto Bight scene a pass. The Canto Bight scene would not be hated at all. People will probably be like, yeah, it was a bit extra, but I mean, hey, who cares? We got freaking Luke over here, coming back to kick butt, start a new Jedi Order. It's beautiful. Kavari says everyone is sensitive these days. Personally, I love the boys. Triggering folks is all a part of the creative process. Well, I mean, it depends on what it is, because the boys, I think in season 1 through 3, I think them being able to poke fun at both, the left and the right side of the aisle was pretty great, because I think it reflected how everyone was in 2020. Just everyone's at each other's necks and it's just everything, So showing both of those sides of that argument in season 1 through 3 was very relatable, and I liked it. I was like, yeah, because that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly what's going on right now. Like, where the right side says this, the left side says that, and it really was that. But with season 4, it's one thing to show the state of a thing, but it's another thing to attack people of a certain side, just because they believe in such and such. I mean, you saw what like this whole thing with Homelander being this representation of Trump, which I think is absolutely blasphemous, and it's hilarious.
They did that. They were planning that, I believe,
all the way from the start.
Yeah, no, yeah. Here's the thing: the boys made fun of both sides. It did it from season 1 onward, and even when it did that, there was a clear bias towards like the left side. I like I'm pretty sure most people knew, but there was still quality writing, and I'd argue season 4, the writing is not that good. It's subpar.
It's too much preaching going on.
Yeah, it's more preaching, less focusing on quality. Writing's predictable. I predicted. I honestly predicted Sister Sage was gonna get fired. I predicted that off the gate, like episodes before it happened. Like that's how bad the writing is.
Yeah. I mean, that's just what it is. It's like that. Kavari said that triggering folks is all a part of the creative process. You go into writing and creating your own stories with the idea of trying to trigger people, you end up getting a Last Jedi. You end up getting, you know, movies that people just don't care for because you're trying to hurt somebody. You're trying to really like, preach at somebody. And I said, and this was a quote that I thought about today as I took my son, me and my wife took our son to go see Despicable Me 4 today. It was his first movie theater experience. And I thought about it. I was waiting in line. I said, movies are where the imagination thrives. The cinema is where we come to watch stories that will mold and shape the rest of our lives. And I thought about that. That's my quote, by the way. I wrote that.
I need to write that down myself. I will take credit. I will say you are the orbiter of that quote.
This has been a coffee moments with Eric. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I say all that to say that the cinema is such hallowed ground. It's such a special place for people to experience stories that stick with them. You know what I'm saying? That inspire them, that give them hope, that give them something to think about. But these days, it just seems like that. Now, we've been spoiled with the MCU because the MCU has absolutely done its job in terms of keeping people in the cinema and keeping people coming back. It's done its job more than enough. But nowadays, I feel like we're in a phase where, people just they can't bring stuff to the movie theater. They can't bring things to the box office because they know how the audience is going to react. They just don't care. If you know this story is crap and you know it's full of political ideology that you're just going to push on people, then don't put it out there because it's going to bomb. It's going to, no one's going to want to see it.
If you write a good story, Eric, if you write a good story or create interesting characters, whatever your politics, like maybe you don't have any politics. Maybe you like the Mario movie, where that's a very apolitical film. Maybe you do have politics. But the point is, no matter what they are, if you create something that entertains people, no one will care. Spider-Verse, I pointed this out. Miles has a BLM sticker on his backpack. Gwen, I think she has like a pro-trans thing on her wall or whatever. But that's not the focus of the story.
That's
not the focus of the story. It's a Spider-Man story. It's a story about love. It's a story about family, friends, bonding, all that stuff. And people loved it. It's progressive. I'll agree with you on that. But because it was well written and mostly entertaining, it's more accepted than hated.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. You can, even now, I didn't even know what to think about Rise of Skywalker, which is my favorite. By the way, it's my favorite of the sequel trilogy movies.
I will never understand that, man.
I'm saying it's the best of the worst. It's the best of the worst, in my opinion. But it's the best of that set of movies. Even at the end of Rise of Skywalker, there's a same-sex kiss between two women in the Resistance. And what was it integral to the story? No, it was just another one of those little things that Disney wanted to sort of sneak in there. They got to do it real sneakily. If they come out too open, everyone's gonna bah. You know what I'm saying? But even with No Time to Die, which I loved, I cried because Daniel Craig was the James Bond I grew up on.
Oh, you love that?
I love No Time to Die. So
I'm only asking because I haven't seen it, but I've heard many James Bond fans tell me it was bad. So I'm curious to hear your take.
Anyone who tells you No Time to Die is bad is lying. No Time to Die is a swan song for James Bond because they hit every note so perfectly, which is that we're coming into a modern age today where the James Bond that we always knew and loved was entering into a world that no longer reflected who he was, and things changed. So in No Time to Die, Q is revealed as gay. But did we care about that? No. Did they make it a huge focus of the story? No. We were focused on finding the virus and doing it. James. The focus was about James and the mission. So what they put right there was of no consequence to the story. And I'm like, I'm not even going to respond to that because it's so insignificant and it's so irrelevant. I hate it. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? I don't care who Q is dating. This isn't about Q. This is about Daniel Craig on his final hurrah. You know,
Yep.
they had the female 007 who took his place in the movie to compete with him. You know, they played that perfectly. She came off, yeah, I'm the new 007, you know, that's me. You know, but by the end of it, she understands that no one can be 007. You know, only James can be that. And she gives him his respect. And you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. I'm like, see, that's what it's all about right there. None of this other stuff matters. And then they gave Daniel Craig the best ending that they could give him. And I'm not going to spoil that because you haven't watched it. But it was freaking awesome. And I couldn't have asked for nothing more from that. Kavari says art is always being a reflective and commentary on society since the first song and painting. That is,
And that's subjective. Yeah, that's like that's very like I'll give a good example. I'll give is Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is not reflective of the 80s. Does I like the story itself? It's not really reflective of many time periods. It's another world. You know, they're like the closest you can tie something political to Dragon Ball is Fusion Reborn, where the dead comes back to life and Adolf Hitler makes a short appearance where he sees Super Saiyans and he's like, oh, the Aryan race. Like he thinks these Super Saiyans are representative of what he believed in. That's the closest you can get to tying Dragon Ball to anything relevant in our world.
it's pretty wild.
Garfield is another example. Like the point is, I could bring up all sorts of art that's not reflective of the times, so to speak. Art is art. Trying to tie it down to anything. That's why when people say art is inherently political, it's like I could bring up a shit ton of examples of art that doesn't tell you jack shit.
But the thing is the question is what happens when art gets presented to you that you disagree with. Like we see a lot of left-leaning political messages being put in Hollywood and movies today that obviously a lot of people with different belief systems are responding to. They're saying, we don't like this. We don't agree with this. What happens if, you know, there's a movie that comes out with right-leaning political messages? You know, what happens to the audience then? If the audience doesn't respond well to that and doesn't agree with that, you know what I'm saying?
Remember the Dirty Harry movies, Eric?
I remember. Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
when those came out, like you had lots of left-wing audiences, film critics, they called the films fascist because you have a police cop that's not willing to follow procedure and is willing to be loose on the rules to get the job done. It's like it's the same thing no matter how you spin it. The key is quality. If you write a quality story, just make something that entertains people, no matter where the story is bent to politically, if it has politics at all, people will enjoy it. That's the key. Like the key is quality in storytelling, quality in entertainment. That's what people should be focused on, not what the politics is. And the issue is the reason why a lot of modern stuff is getting that controversy is because they're trying to shove their political beliefs down audiences' throats before giving them something entertaining. If you give your audience something entertaining, then you have a chance at convincing them of your political beliefs.
All right. But it's all about the presentation. You're right. It's all about the presentation of that thing and how you present it to an audience. Because, like with Joker, I found that to be such a beautiful, beautiful cinematic experience. Just, you know, being put into that world, you know, that from a perspective we never seen. We've never been in Joker's shoes, really, from that perspective. So that was something very interesting that intrigued me. I'm like, okay, how does Joker really feel? Like, how does one even begin to become someone like Joker? And, you know, well, a lot of people have this focus on, oh, well, when does he meet Batman? When is Batman, you know, da da da. It's not about Batman. It's about Joker. It's about a version of Joker that we're seeing his rise to how he became Joker. That's what this is about. It's a character. It has nothing to do with Batman. You know, like why can't we get back to that? And this is not the fault. The fault. I'm not saying it's negative. Marvel has spoiled us beyond all comprehension with all sorts of team up movies and characters that we see together all the time. You know, but what happened to just those individual movies where we focused on that one character? You know, I see people already wanting to put Robert Pattinson's Batman and David Cornsweet's Batman together. I'm like, man, what happened to just like letting them stand on their own? Like, don't do that to Robert Pattinson's Batman. Let Robert stay in his own little world and
But he has his own Joker already.
exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't put him and David Cornsweet. Like, come on, man. Like, everything doesn't have to be the MCU, which is what got DC in this predicament in the first place. Not everything has to be the MCU.
DC made the mistake of trying to follow Marvel. I said this back when the DCU was like starting. I'm like, don't do a DC cinematic universe. Do a DC cinematic multiverse. Make all sorts of sets of films taking place in different universes, and finish it off with a Crisis on Infinite Earths. That, in my opinion, would make so many DC fans happy. But they wanted to follow Marvel's direction, except they rushed the process. And, well, here we are.
And here we are. You know. So that's just what it is, man. That's what it is. But my final thoughts before we get off of here is just, I mean, the Acolyte, will I continue to follow more Star Wars because of it? More or less. I mean, I'm still planning on watching Ahsoka season 2. I'm still planning on seeing what they're gonna do with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. So, I mean,
are you interested for that Jedi movie from the guy who made Logan?
Mangold?
Yeah,
the Origin of the Jedi, that movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in it, but again, it depends on what they do because James Mangold just did that last Indiana Jones movie in which he totally just butchered.
Oh yeah, no, like I tried to give him goodwill after Logan, but Dial of Destiny was so bad to me that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be more critical of this guy.
Yeah, because like I said, Disney can do so much good, and then at the same time they just do something that makes you go like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, why would you do this? And it pains me. It makes me cry. I still get emotional watching the sequel trilogy trailers. I still get emotional watching all the sequel trilogy trailers because they're such darn good trailers. The trailers are so freaking epic. They're among the best trailers ever done for Star Wars. But then when you get to the movie, it's not gonna be what it's not gonna live up to that. But you can always go back to those trailers and remember the hype that you had. But the movie's just gonna eat your heart out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just that, man. So my position is the same thing as it was last time. I don't know where I stand with Star Wars. I don't know. Am I done with it? Some days I am, and then they'll do something like tonight, like put Darth Plagueis in the episode, and then I'm like, well, maybe we can see. You know what I'm saying?
Eric, you told me you're writing your own stories, right? Like you're creating your own book. You mentioned that to me.
Yeah, I am. I'm in the process of writing my own stories.
You ever thought? I want to know. You ever thought of making Star Wars fan content that is to your preference and making that what ultimately makes you happy?
I am. I did say that I was writing. In addition to that, when I do my warm up writing, I write a little bit of my own Star Wars fan fiction. Right now I'm writing a little short stories on like The Last Jedi, like a rewrite of The Last Jedi, what I would have done if I wrote The Last Jedi, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just I plan on sharing them soon, but it's not done yet. So, but
Kavari, I wouldn't go down this liberal conservative direction when it comes to creativity, mainly to the point that the vast amount of like liberal based artists that have created iconic works have been influenced by who should I say, Tolkien, and another example is Lovecraft. And both Tolkien and Lovecraft are highly conservative by today's very progressive standards. And many liberal and leftist artists were influenced and inspired by them. So I disagree with you on the idea of political leanings making you deciding how creative you are. I honestly like a good example is Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko was pretty right leaning, and he co-created Doctor Strange. That's one of the most creative out there characters you can come up with. He also co-created Spider-Man. But Stan Lee also co-created like those characters with him. But the point is that both Stan Lee and Steve Ditko aren't progressive by today's standards. I'd say they're progressive, but not by today's standards. And they still created characters that you see in the MCU and celebrate and cheer for. I don't know if you're a Marvel fan, but the point is this like creativity, it has nothing to do with political leanings. That's far from the truth. Art is art, just be creative. Come up with an idea, make a story, go from there.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of it today because, Star Wars Theory is still planning. He's doing Vader Episode 2 and 3. He's doing his own fan fictions. There's so many great animators out there that come up with their own, stories and stuff, which I think, this is my final thought, for a lot of fans. If you don't like what's being put out, maybe it's time for you to put pen to pad and try your own. That's exactly what I'm doing.
That's what I've been saying, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's no amount of me crying and being on here, being upset about what happened to Star Wars or any of my favorite franchises. There's no point in me doing that because nothing's going to ever change. So if I'm upset about that, then why not channel my own? I got stories that I've been wanting to write since I was a kid in elementary school and middle school that I was dreaming about. And now I'm putting word to action and doing those stories.
Yeah.
I feel like I have something to say with those stories.
Dude, I created like whole omniverses of stories and characters. I feel like Jay and Eric, you've obviously created stuff that you've dreamt of. Just, I'd argue you're creative. I'd argue I'm creative. We should just be creative people.
Be creative.
Yeah. Doesn't matter what, your politics are. I don't believe in politics at all, and I'm pretty sure Eric has his own views, but that's irrelevant. We're still very creative people. I have my own,
but I try to keep them. I don't want to let that interfere with my story. I don't want to preach to anybody, about that. I want the audience to experience, want them to experience. But man, this was an epic podcast.
I agree. You have a good night, man. It was awesome hanging with you.
You too, man. You have a great night, bro. Thank you for tuning in and being in with me.
No problem.
And shout out to everyone out there. Shout out to Kavari. Shout out to you. Thanks for interacting with us tonight. We love having people who tap in, viewers to tap in and just talk, and communicate and share their opinions, no matter what they are. We love to talk to the audience and share. So thank you for tuning in tonight. Shout out Lord Bloodsith. Shout out to you. Shout out Richard Reeves tonight. Shout out to you, bro. I know you're out there working on the night shift, working the overnight, doing the thing. So shout out to Richard Reeves. Shout out to you, bro. Everyone on YouTube. Shout out to everyone on X. Subscribe. Follow the channel as well. Follow us here on X. Love to have you guys follow here on X. Always a pleasure to have you guys with us on the after hours. This podcast will be available wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, especially. So podcasts will be up there. And we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the latest episode. And everyone have a blessed night. Happy Wednesday to everyone. So be blessed. And y'all stay safe out there. I'll see you guys next time.